Hello, I'm Bill Kirshner. In this video, I will be discussing what is required to satisfy the reasonable fear element under Section 7114A2B of the Federal Service Labor Management Relations Statute. This is the fifth of 7 brief videos on investigatory examinations. To learn more, you can always visit the FLRA online at flra.gov. As you recall under the statute, there are 5 elements to the union's right to represent employees during investigatory examinations. An agency representative must examine a bargaining unit employee in connection with an investigation for which the employee has a reasonable fear of discipline, and the employee must request representation. Although the employee must request representation, the right in Section 7114A2B is the exclusive representative's right to be given an opportunity to attend the meeting with the employee. The employee's request triggers a union's right to attend the meeting, to represent the employee and the bargaining unit. Each of these 5 elements must be present. If any of the elements are missing, a charge alleging an unfair labor practice will not be supported and the charge may be dismissed. In this video, we will be focusing on the part of Section 7114A2B requiring that the employee reasonably believe that the examination may result in disciplinary action against the employee. Now let's take a look at what is required to establish a reasonable fear of discipline. To trigger the right to representation, an employee must reasonably believe that the examination may result in discipline against the employee. This often occurs when the employee is told the purpose of the questioning. The facts and circumstances of the situation also weigh into the determination of whether the employee's fear of discipline is reasonable. The reasonable belief determination is based on objective, not subjective factors, meaning while the employee's belief will be considered, it alone is not determinative. Some employees' fears may be found, when all of the facts and circumstances are considered, to not support the conclusion that a reasonable employee would have feared discipline. Similarly, the supervisor's or examiner's belief is also not dispositive, and given the possibility that the questioner is not aware of the full picture, a denial of a representation request based on a belief that the employee doesn't reasonably fear discipline is subject to review during the unfair labor practice investigatory and litigation process. Let's consider a hypothetical.
I want to speak to you about some missing computers. Your cubicle neighbor may be stealing federal property.
Should I have a union representative?
No, you are not under investigation. Your neighbor is. You have no reasonable fear of discipline.
Is the supervisor's determination correct? The answer is, it depends. If the employee knows nothing about the loss, then the employee has no basis to fear discipline, and the denial may not represent an unfair labor practice. But what if the employee was involved in the theft? Or what if the employee saw or heard something, failed to report it, and the agency has a policy making failure to report suspected wrongdoing a basis for discipline? These possible facts, unknown to the supervisor, reflect the challenges supervisors face when deciding whether to grant or deny the representation request. As you can see, supervisors without full knowledge often must make a call about whether to grant or deny a request for union representation. Remember, as a supervisor, you can always grant the request or contact human resources. Supervisors can also deny the request, but thereafter cannot stop a charge from being filed to have that denial reviewed by the FLRA. Employees need not be the subject of the investigation to have a reasonable belief that discipline could arise from their responses to questions. Similarly, even where the purpose of the interview is not to determine possible disciplinary action, an employee may still harbor a reasonable belief that discipline could arise from the interview, where the information could be used to support a future disciplinary action. Let's look at some authority cases to further clarify these issues. In Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management, the authority affirmed an arbitrator's finding that an employee reasonably feared that discipline may be assessed at a meeting to discuss concerns with the employee's conduct, even when the employee was told the meeting was to address safety concerns and was non-disciplinary. Further, in Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General, although the employee who requested representation was only a witness, it was concluded that an employee who was interviewed as part of an investigation could have reasonably believed that discipline would result if he was found to have knowledge of others' misconduct. And finally, in Nuclear Regulatory Commission, The authority affirmed an arbitrator's finding that even though the revocation of a security clearance is not a disciplinary action, an employee can reasonably fear discipline arising from a security clearance interview based on the agency's admission that information obtained in the course of a security clearance interview could be used in a disciplinary proceeding. A reasonable fear of discipline can be found even if the agency is not contemplating discipline. It is the possibility, rather than the inevitability of future discipline, which determines the right to representation. Thus, a supervisor stating, "We have no current plans to discipline you," is not dispositive as to whether the employee's belief is objectively reasonable. What if the supervisor goes beyond offering assurances and promises immunity? In some circumstances, a grant of immunity from disciplinary action is sufficient to eliminate an employee's objective fear of discipline. The offer of immunity, however, does not undermine an employee's reasonable fear of discipline where the employee reasonably doubts the offer's validity, doubts the individual's authority to make the offer, or does not understand the concepts of immunity. In conclusion, a reasonable fear of discipline is one of 5 mandatory elements necessary to establish a right to representation in investigatory examinations. In this video, we discuss the requirement that an employee must reasonably fear discipline for a right for union representation to exist. Video 1 gives an overview of the statutory right to representation under Section 7114A2B. Video 2 discusses who is an agency representative. Video 3 focuses on bargaining unit employees. Video 4 covers what constitutes an examination. Video 6 goes over the ways an employee may request representation. And Video 7 explains the agency's obligations following a request for representation and a union's rights during the examination. Thanks for watching this video from the FLRA. For more information, please visit us online or contact your nearest regional office. A survey link is in the box below. We'd appreciate your feedback.